This is a production of WTVI PBS Charlotte.
The following episode of Charlotte, a City of International Success, is brought to you by Central Piedmont Community College and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Maha Gingrich. Coming up on Charlotte, a City of International Success, I will interview Vinay Patel, and we're going to talk about the importance of mentoring, importance of family values, ethical values, and of course, giving back to the community. Stay with us.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Charlotte, a City of International Success. I'm Dr. Maha Gingrich. Today our guest is Mr. Vinay Patel. Vinay is the President and CEO of Sri Hotels. Vinay, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Maha. Pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, actually, pleasure is mutual because your uncle was the first guest on my show, and that was Mr. Ravi Patel. So I am so pleased to interview the next generation and see how things have changed, if any. So originally you're from?
Fiji, born and raised.
Fiji, not India.
No, beautiful island of Fiji in the South Pacific.
Okay, see, most of the time when you think about a name, a traditional name like Vinay Patel, you always think you're from India.
I get that a lot. And at the end of the day, my grandparents moved down to Fiji
Okay.
during Queen Victoria's time for an opportunity. And from India, you moved everywhere. You went to Fiji, you went to Africa, you went to the Caribbean, wherever the Commonwealth reach was is where they went. And my grandparents moved to Fiji because my grandmother's brother had moved there and saw opportunity and called them and said, this is where, here's the opportunity for you. And that's what they did. So my dad was born there. Pretty much all of his siblings were born in Fiji.
How many siblings did you?
My dad
Grandpa
is
had?
9 total. And
Nine siblings total? Wow. Hats off to your grandma.
Exactly.
That's
And
not easy.
they grew up there. And they love Fiji. And even my uncle, you mentioned Ravi Patel.
Yeah?
He was born in Fiji.
Oh, okay,
And
yes.
went
I
back to
remember
India,
that.
got his education. So that's our story. And you're
That's-
right. I'll get it all the time. Vinay Patel. So what part of India? I have ancestry in India. I have roots in India.
But not from India.
Not from India.
Yeah, that's just a common, theme, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
So you were born there. That means you were also brought up there. Now, did you have siblings? Do you have siblings?
I do. I have 2 younger brothers.
Two younger
One
brothers.
is 6 years younger than me. One is 16 years younger than me.
Aha, you become a big brother there.
I did. Actually, it's an interesting relationship. Because of the age difference, my relationship with my youngest brother was very different. And my wife reminded me, early on, that it's a very different relationship. Remember, he's 16 years younger than you. The age difference between my mother and I is only 18. It was interesting growing up with younger siblings.
So how was it growing up in Fiji? Because, like I said, we're only thinking about maybe from India, but that's not it. You're from Fiji, and it was an island. It is an island.
It still
And
is.
so how was it growing up?
It was, I don't think it was any different from growing up anywhere. It was what you knew. People talk about, well, it was Fiji. I'm like, well, that was home. It was Fiji. It was free. Back then, the worries of the world weren't the same as the worries of the world are today.
That is so true.
And we didn't grow up with TV. Technology was very limited.
Yeah.
I remember technology was a calculator, and that came in high school for me.
And that's good.
Yeah.
Used your brain.
You use your brains. You did most of your work by hand, not by calculator.
Wow.
And it was fun. It was about being outside. It was about being part of friends. It was about making friends and doing things with friends rather than staying inside and
Yes,
doing that.
playing on the computer.
Playing on the computer. Eventually, I guess when I was 12, 13, we finally got a TV. But the TV was with a Betamax. right? So
okay,
it was
yeah.
all recorded
It's all
stuff. So you had no
recorded
live
stuff.
TV of anything. You had radio. I remember listening to cricket matches, World Cup cricket on a radio.
Wow.
Put the antenna out and do that.
That is amazing. So what school did you go to over there?
In Fiji, I went to a Catholic school. My first
Catholic
2 years,
school?
Mount St. Mary's.
Oh, wow.
Mount St. Mary's, and it's interesting. I'm probably the only person that might be alive that was allowed to give communion but not accept communion because I wasn't baptized. I was an altar boy in a Catholic school, and because it was the best school, and that's at least to my parents. It was about the education, and education at a Catholic school there was great. Then I went from there on to high school for a couple of years before I moved here, and I went out of town doing that too. I went an hour outside of where I grew up and where I lived to go to 2 years of high school.
When you were growing up, was your family, well-to-do family, or was it financially challenging for your family?
I mean, we were
Or
the
was
typical
it a
middle-class family, I would say.
middle-class family, yeah.
I know my parents, my dad,
Yeah.
and his siblings had to suffer. Not suffer, but had to scrounge, had to be very frugal, had to work hard to get everything. Anytime you'll ask for a story, they gave up education if they needed to ensure that the siblings were successful or the family was successful.
Okay.
And growing up, I saw my dad. I saw my father, I saw my uncles working hard for everything they had. But and the reason for that was to ensure that the kids never thought like, oh, well, I'm gonna miss out on this, I'm gonna miss out on that. No, we weren't living the life of luxury, but we never felt ever that we couldn't.
Yeah.
But what that taught you was, there was always, if you want something, you gotta work for it.
Yes.
And then you have to be willing to do what it takes, make the sacrifices when necessary, and then reap the rewards later.
Wow.
If whatever that might be.
No, very true. And then you have such, wonderful role models, obviously, because you're talking about your father and your uncle sacrificing things to ensure that the younger generation has. You said education was extremely important, and also obviously all these values they are teaching you about life.
Very true.
Getting your priorities, and make sure that you study and focus on your success.
That was one of the talking about role models.
Yeah.
My father had an accident when I was very young. He fell off of a second-story building in Fiji. If he would have been anywhere outside of Fiji, he probably would have walked. But they told him he would never walk again. I saw him persevere. He rehabilitated himself, and he walked.
He walked.
He walked. He'd say, "This isn't me," because he was a very socially active guy in Fiji, and I never saw this because I was too young. But the stories I heard was, he was the popular kid. I don't remember my father as the popular kid. I remember my father as this, guy that was always there, that worked hard, that ensured that every need was met. And from him, I saw willpower. The willpower, the will to say, if I'm willing, I will do it. If there's a will, there's a way. That's what you learn from him. And to this day, until he passed away 4 years ago, the one person on this earth that I'm truly was scared of was him, because it was out of respect.
Right.
Nothing other than respect, and saying, this is a person that knew what he wanted, knew what he was comfortable in, and it was about his kids and his family. So I learned that, and then hard work, because I would see him wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work. Because we had my family was, eventually they were in the lumber business, so Fiji, tropical climate, you never know what's happening. There was always issues. If hurricane came through, or there was more rain and the villages needed stuff. So I'd seen him wake up in the morning, because that's what you did. That's what you did. You went and you did it. And then, like I said, you reap the rewards at the end of the day, because we traveled. Every couple of years we would travel, and he would show us the good things in life,
Oh,
so you could
isn't that
aspire to it.
wonderful? Wonderful.
You know, whether it was going to a local restaurant, that was a good thing in life. That was,
It was not taken for granted that
no,
in a week maybe 3 times you're eating
no,
out.
we never did. That was
It was a luxury.
It was a luxury. It was a luxury.
Yeah, it was a treat.
And
Yeah.
you got to respect that. You got to really appreciate
Yeah.
that whole side of the story.
Thinking about when I hear these kind of things, I think it has a lot of relevance to who you are today, and then how you deal with your next generation, your children, your nieces and nephews. All that, I think it carries on because you actually got the foundation of do's and don'ts and the values and the priorities and ethics and making sure that you actually succeed and not be overwhelmed just because you got the money. Just really organizing your life in such a way. So after you finished your high school, what did you do?
Went to college.
Went to college.
Actually, I wanted to go to Chapel Hill. I wanted to go to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. As a freshman, they classified me out of state. So
Okay.
I was living with my uncle, Ravi Patel.
Oh,
Was my legal guardian, but the
okay.
university wouldn't accept documentation from Fiji. So I ended up doing 1 year of college here in UNC. I went to UNC Charlotte for a year.
Oh, wonderful.
And then transferred
Go
over.
49ers there.
I was a
Yeah.
smart kid. I was very smart in high school. I was very smart, I thought, personally.
I'm sure you are.
In my freshman year.
Yeah.
Then I went off to Chapel Hill, and I forgot something. I forgot priorities. I forgot prioritization. I forgot that I started losing touch of what my dad had taught me about priorities. And I still made it through. I graduated. But I remembered after I graduated, and I came back, and it was this thought, okay, my family's in this hotel business, so I don't have to worry about it. I've got something to do. And that's kind of the mentality I went with.
Took it for granted?
Took it for granted.
Okay.
Then I came back, and my uncle, Ravi Patel, said, okay, now you're done. What are you going to do?
Ooh.
Like,
So
what do you
it
mean,
wasn't like you got a job.
Not at all.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Not at all. So
What a wonderful
So I
challenge.
learned that, I worked through college in hotels. I worked for him after college as well, while I was looking to do something,
Yeah.
trying to find out to get a
What
career
kind
for
of
myself.
work were you doing?
In the hotels, I did everything. I started off, I've cleaned rooms before. I've cleaned rooms, I've swept, I've cleaned bathrooms, I've moved furniture. I've done everything pretty much, all the way up to running and managing and being an AGM in sales. So I've kind of worked my way
From
up.
the ground level
From the
up.
ground level up. And that's thanks to, again, work ethic, showing that you have to do it. So I got done. I'm like, okay, good. I'm okay. I'll go work in the corporate office. I don't have anything to worry about. And then I get this message, no,
the
you're not.
message.
What are you going to do?
Quickly on, I'm sure your path, just knowing you was obviously very challenging because you probably went from job to job to job. So what was your very first job then after you graduated?
I was going to sell insurance.
Insurance?
That's the only in 1992 when I got done, the only people hiring were insurance companies.
Oh, okay.
And then I got lucky
Isn't
in the
that
sense that an
interesting?
opportunity arose
Yeah.
in New Jersey for Days of America. They were looking for an Asian American to be a franchise services manager. So I interviewed. They called me back, offered me the job, called me back and said, you don't have the job, we offered it to somebody else.
Oh.
So wait. But it all worked out. I got a
Okay.
job up there and I grew working for a franchise organization. I learned the hotel business from a different perspective.
Yeah.
I was a franchise services manager. I grew in that role, became the lead franchise service manager where I trained other people that the company was hiring on the corporate side. Was able to move from there within the same company up to a field marketing job because I loved that side of the business.
Yeah.
So I was doing that. And then another mentor of mine, John Russell, who was then the hotel division president of the company at that time was called Sendon.
Sendon?
Sendon.
Sendon,
At
oh.
Sendon. Now it's Wyndham Hotel Group.
Oh, I
so
see.
that's the
Yeah,
new company.
okay.
Looked at me and said, I think you've got to do something different, and offered me a position to be a vice president of marketing for Knights Inns, or Knights franchise system. So here I was, under 30, vice president,
Vice president
of
of
a franchise
marketing.
company. Okay, but it was all learning. I learned, from Ravi Uncle, I learned how to be more than you can be. There are challenges, there are sacrifices that you have to make. I learned it from my dad, learned it from my uncle. Then on the business side, I had leaders who could. So John Russell, and when I went to Knights Franchise Services, another mentor was Ramesh Gokul, who was the president of the company. So collectively, I was able to pick their brains and learn and absorb and kind of get as much as you can out of it.
Well, most of the time, there are people there, but are you willing to learn? Even, because in life, I would think, I'm sure you have gone through this, that everything that we experience is pretty much you have something to learn from.
Very true.
It is a life experience, something you're going to pick that stays with you for the rest of your life. So that openness of mind to learn, and then probably they saw in you the motivation, the self-motivation to succeed and to excel, and then you were willing to work hard for it.
And I think that's true no matter what you do.
Yeah.
I talked to my kids. My wife and I, Shafala and I, had this discussion the other day. You can be whatever you want to be if you put your mind to it. If you have the ethic, if you have the drive. And then that's what we should be. That's what anybody should be. This country gave opportunity to people like my uncle, like all the immigrants that came, that said, if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to put in the effort, if you're willing to sacrifice, there is an opportunity for you. And that's the mentality I went in with, going in and saying, here was this kid out of college thinking he had everything made, moving to New Jersey, saying, oh my God, somebody's gonna pay me $30,000 a year. I'm like, fantastic. And I realized it was $900 a month in rent, so reality kicked in very quickly.
So financially you were challenged, and you talked about your wife. When did you meet her?
I met my wife for the first time in 1993 at a family wedding here in Charlotte, my uncle's wedding. Well, that was just in passing. Then we met officially, I guess, for a longer time in 1994.
Okay.
November of 1994.
You got married.
And we got, I proposed to her Valentine's Day of 1995, and we got married that October.
Wonderful.
So, and it's been fantastic. And
so 1994, and so you were married, and so you were still transitioning, obviously, with your jobs, right?
I started in New Jersey in 92. So I was in New Jersey. I was in Jersey. I mean, every year was the worst winter they ever had.
Oh gosh,
unfortunately.
I can imagine.
And then we moved there, and then Shefali moved after in 95 after we got married. She moved there, and that's actually when my career really propelled.
That partnership.
That partnership. I remember I was field marketing director, and I would leave Sunday or Monday, come back Thursday or Friday every week.
Wow.
And the only way I would have been able to do it is if she was there to support it.
Did you have a child by then or afterwards?
No, our first child, Millen, was born in 2001. So we needed to learn, we needed to grow together first. We need to learn to appreciate each other first. And she...
You obviously did.
Yeah, and we did. And she was there every step of the way. And that's just it. That's when my career really flourished. Yes, I had mentors. I had all these people that I looked up to, that I believed in, that taught me, and I was willing to absorb, but I needed a pillar behind me to push me along.
Yeah, I think you have a great pillar. That's your wife,
that's what happened. That's what happened.
It's a partnership. Now, so how did you end up in Charlotte?
When I went from New Jersey to Atlanta, Mike Levin, who everybody knows in the hotel business, he was with Holiday Inns, and he started his own franchise company, asked me to come run a brand for him.
Ah, okay.
His quote to me was, "I know you're not going to be out long, but come work for me." And I couldn't leave right on the spot.
Yeah.
Because the company I was with just lost. Ramesh Gokul Mentor had just left. He just decided to retire, and I told Mike Levin, I can't do this to a company that took a 21-year-old out of college and taught him the ropes and made him a vice president. There's something for me. So I didn't. But once that all transition happened, I went to New Jersey. I went to Atlanta. Who was working in Atlanta. Ravi uncle called me and said, "Vinay, it's time to come home." I thought he was joking.
Okay.
So this was a conversation in November of 2000.
Okay.
And I didn't even think about it. And then in March, he calls me again. He goes, have you thought about what I said? I'm like, what'd you say?
What did you say?
He goes, coming back
like
to the
that.
family. I'm like, oh, you were serious about that. So I came up and I talked and we talked about it. And I knew I was going to come back eventually. I knew this is where I was going to end up in whatever capacity the family thought was right.
Yeah.
So we moved here in July of 2001.
Okay.
Shefali was 7 months pregnant.
Oh.
So
wow.
with our first son,
Yeah.
and we moved, and I moved in,
here.
just moved to Charlotte, packed everything up, moved into my parents' house initially. Their garage became our storage unit, and we were in a 2,200 square foot ranch house with my mom, my dad, my youngest brother,
Yeah.
Shefali, and I, pregnant, and we had our first
Oh my
had Mill in
gosh.
there.
In some ways, it's wonderful because you have the whole family support.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have the baby, I think that is coming back. You know, to raise a family. So now, you know, we know that family really has become a huge anchor for you, and mentors that were in your life and that are in your life, and you have learned a lot, obviously. So, when you came here, did you come with the same position that you're in today, or
No.
were you in a different position?
I was. When I started, I was vice president of sales and marketing. That's what I did. I
Okay.
did sales and marketing because that's the background I had.
Sure.
And I moved from there into some operations. I oversaw both operations and marketing. And I think it was 4 years ago when Ravi Uncle and the first generation that founded this company
Yeah.
wanted to slow down.
Yeah.
Now, you know they can never slow down.
They're not.
But yeah,
For namesake.
Exactly. So that's
Yeah.
when they made the transition, and I
Transition.
was named the president and CEO of the company. And Parag, who's his partner's nephew, is the chief financial and chief development officer. So the next generation kind of took control.
I'm really seeing like a trend here. So the business approach that you have, the managerial approach that you have, is it top-down approach in your organization?
Not necessarily top down.
Okay.
It's more, you know, our general managers at all of our hotels,
Yeah.
we passionately call them CEOs of their own building.
Okay.
So information germinates up.
Mm-hmm.
We're a front-facing people business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So the best ideas come from the ground up. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a general managers meeting, and we asked all our managers to create the tripod, your org chart. Everybody did the traditional triangle, CEO up top, line level at the bottom. One person flipped it, inverted the triangle, put the line level folks up top, and said the CEOs at the bottom. Because
well, that's telling you a lot about what your organization, what people are thinking about the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also know that you're very active in the community. You're serving on a lot of boards. You're everywhere. And so was Mr. Ravi Patel,
Yes, he
and
was.
so is Mr. Ravi Patel. So why do you think in an organization, I probably have about 2 minutes left, why do you think in an organization that this kind of approach to give back to the community is important?
You can't just be a business partner of the community. You have to be involved. Lesson I learned from Ravi Uncle and everybody else, if you're not involved, you're forgotten. Mm-hmm. Whether it's politically, socially, civic, it doesn't matter what it is. And we have to. Mm-hmm. This city, this community, Charlotte, has been home, has been great to me personally and our family as a whole. And if we cannot be a part of the community and give back in whichever form, philanthropy is great, but there's a lot more than just philanthropy itself. It's time.
It's time, which is huge in a position like
that. It is, and I serve on, yes, you're right, I serve on numerous boards, both locally and at the state level, and on Marriott on a national basis as well.
Yeah.
But it's part of who we are. It's part of what we have to do, and that's, if you're not, you're forgotten. And we try to make sure that our properties do the same thing as well. We want each of our hotel teams to be
Yeah.
involved. We give a yearly award for community service.
Oh, okay. That's
So-
so encouraging.
Yeah, so everybody
Yeah.
puts it in, and everybody gets an award. I mean, a team gets an award for being active. And it's, again, it's not about just writing a check. It's about getting people involved. It's about my team up in Concord going up and hammering nails, building a house.
Wow.
It's another team making blankets for the Children's Hospital. Whatever that is. Now, we've got, our Spring Hill Suites hotels do Save the Arts. So they have fundraisers to save art at public schools.
Oh, I love that.
So they'll make contributions to, and we'll connect and do it. So it's about being part of the fabric of the community at the end of the day.
It's amazing. I think just within this conversation, you yourself have really explained a lot. One is look for mentors, right? To make sure that you get that guidance and have the fire in your belly
Yes.
to succeed
Yes.
and have the passion. And also don't forget the ethical values and don't forget the family values. And don't forget to prioritize so that your work and your family is completely balanced. Like, at least you do your best to balance and get your priorities right. And that is absolutely wonderful. And as an organization, make sure that you give back to the community. And Vinay, it has been wonderful speaking with you. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Ma. It's been fun. It's been a fun ride, and I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Thank you. And thank you for watching Charlotte, a city of international success. I'm Dr. Maha Gingrich. Please join us again next time, right here on WTVI PBS Charlotte.
A production of WTVI PBS Charlotte.